Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing my March reading wrap-up video. I don't know if this is the video that you will see currently because I am filming this on the day that I should have uploaded already and I haven't. Anyway, as I said, today's going to be my March reading wrap-up video. I would say that March for me was a pretty good reading month, but also it was a very mixed reading month because I managed to read 7 books, which is really great for me. I am obviously a really slow reader. However, in terms of the books that I read a very varied mixture. I read some incredible books, I read some okay books, and I read some really terrible books. So definitely a mixed reading month. I kind of didn't mind it because I did read a lot of different genres. Some of the books I could have done without ever reading, but without further ado, here are the books that I managed to read in March. So the first book that I read in March was Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. So this book essentially follows a girl named Sadie and a guy named Sam, and if I was to put it kind of as an overall plot summary, I would say that it basically follows their lives as they go from young children all the way up until they've, become adults and they are well into their careers. And essentially it just follows them as, they journey through life, they learn about love, they learn about loss, they learn about success and failures, just their lives in general. And that sounds like it would be really boring, but honestly it wasn't. I love this book. I ended up giving it 5 stars. The main reason that I honestly wanted to read this was because I wanted to see if it would make me cry, because I watched Sarah without an H. She did a reading vlog with this book in it and she cried, and I was like, automatically I need to read that book to see if it will make me cry. And spoiler alert, it did. If you want to see the mess that this book made me, then the reading vlog is on my channel. It's literally the only book that I think I featured in that reading vlog. I love the characters in this book. I think they were incredibly flawed and complex, and I do think that they made a lot of mistakes. There was a lot of miscommunication, and I can really see why people wouldn't like that, but honestly I really love that about them, because them being flawed made them feel more human. And the whole time I was reading this book, it was hard not to feel like they were real. And the way that the games were written about, because obviously these characters, they become game developers, and so the games are written about in the book, but they're written about in such a way that it almost feels like they're real. And I had to keep reminding myself that this was a work of fiction, because after a while this all did feel real to me. There's also a lot of video game references which I really enjoyed, because I myself am a gamer. I would say I'm more of a casual gamer. I don't get to game as much as I would like, but I did really enjoy the video game references. There was a couple that I did pick up on that were very familiar to me, especially ones from like, the 90s and stuff. There were like a couple of games that I actually played growing up, so those were really cool to see. I also really love the way that this book was written, because it was told in the present but it would jump forward to the future, and it would also jump back to the past a lot, and it sounds like it would be confusing, but for me it really wasn't, and I just really enjoyed it. And I can almost see this book being adapted really well on screen, and I kind of hope that it will be, because I would love to see this played out by people in real life, just because I would love to engage myself in the whole story again. The whole thing was just heartbreaking. It was just a real kind of human story, and I loved it from start to finish. I was just so invested, and this book turned me into a blubbering wreck, so if that doesn't make you want to read the book, then I don't know what will. So the next book that I read in March was Scarlet Angel by T.S. Abbey. This is the 3rd book in the Mindfuck series. I won't really talk much about this because I did also read a couple of more books in the series during the month, but also I feel like if I was to speak in depth about this particular book, it would ruin a lot of the plot. Overall, the plot is basically about this woman who was wronged when she was like a teenager. Essentially, she was attacked along with her brother and her dad. Brutal things happened to her. There's a lot of kind of content warnings for this book, like violence, rape, that kind of thing. She went through a lot, and basically she is getting back at all of the teenage boys who did her wrong by turning into a serial killer and hunting every single one of them down. This series is incredibly addicting. If you want to read a series that you will get through incredibly quickly and have this storyline that you are just going to be obsessed with, give this series a go, because I would say, is it the most amazingly well written thing? Absolutely not. I did find the romance a little bit insta-lovey, especially at the beginning of the book. You know, as the story kind of progresses, I can kind of like overlook it a bit, but it is very insta-lovey. However, the main character is a badass. I just have thoroughly enjoyed reading this series. I did give it 3 stars. Again, I don't think it's the most amazingly written thing on this planet, but seriously addicting. So the third book that I read during March was Book of Night by Holly Black. Now, I am going to admit that I did this half and half. So I read this book up until like 20 something percent, and then I switched over to audiobook, because honestly, if I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have made it through the whole of this book. I chose to pick this up because I think it's been on my list for a while, and I actually think it might have been my anticipated read for last year. And also I watched a video from Sarah About an H, and she read the book, I think because someone recommended it to her, and she read it and basically went against everyone else's belief about the fact that this book is terrible, and she actually loved it. I went into this book not even thinking about the Cruel Prince series, because honestly I wasn't looking for a carbon copy of the Cruel Prince. Like, I didn't particularly care if it wasn't like that, because I was looking for something different. This is Holly Black's first adult fantasy, and I'm kind of hoping it might be her last. I did not enjoy this book, like, at all. I thought the concept was really interesting, and I felt like it could have been something really great, but it fell flat. I thought this was so boring. It wasn't interesting. I felt like there were so many side characters who I couldn't really remember the names of because they weren't that interesting to the story. I also felt like this book read more like a sequel than it did kind of like the start of something, you know, new, because it almost felt like I was getting little snippets of information here and there, but it wasn't really info dumping enough for me to understand anything. And honestly, the whole book, it just takes so long to get to any point that is interesting at all. And it's such a shame, because I felt like this could have been something really good. The book honestly feels like it reads more like an 800-page book, and honestly I don't understand why this book is as long as it is. I think it's like 400 odd something pages. Honestly, it felt torturous. It felt like I was reading this book for a lifetime. Nothing happened. About probably the last 100 pages is when all the action starts, and that is it. I didn't like any of the characters, and the plot was just a little bit shite. So I did not enjoy this at all. I don't think I would be reading on with this series if it is a series. I think it might be a duology, I'm not sure. But I'm never gonna read this again, because it was bad. And it wasn't even bad because it was nothing like The Cruel Prince, but I think the thing is that Holly's writing in The Cruel Prince is quite magical and whimsical, and I felt like the world building was done really well in that series. In this book, there was none. It happened here and there, and then it would give you like a snippet of information like towards the end of the book that you could have known at the beginning. I couldn't stand it. I rated it 2 stars. I'm never reading on with this series because I can't. So the fourth book that I read in March was, I don't know if this is my first 1 star. I think it might be my second 1 star, I think. But that book is Beautiful Disaster by Jamie Maguire. And it was in fact a disaster, and none of it was beautiful. I wasn't going into this book expecting anything spectacular. I was simply intrigued because the trailer for the movie came out, and actually the trailer looks pretty good. I don't really want to give my hard-earned money to it in any way, especially if it is like the book, for reasons that I will go into in a minute. But I also found out after I read the book that the author is incredibly problematic. She's racist. She's a Trump supporter. I don't care what your political standpoint is, but Trump is a bit, Also, apparently she's a homophobe and racist. Did I say that? I don't know. Anyway, she's just all around a bad person, and the characters that she's written about and the way she's written about them was absolutely not okay. So I will never read anything by this author ever again. I don't want to give my money to the film, but the film kind of makes it look like a 90s rom-com, so I'm kind of intrigued. But yeah, let's get on with why I hated this book. So the book essentially follows a young woman who's in college and her name's Abby. She is like this all around good girl, you know, she's trying to leave her past behind her and basically, you know, become a new person and just be, you know, that like really sweet, innocent person. And then she meets, what the fuck is his name? Travis. Then she meets Trashy Travis. Who belongs in the trash. And Travis is basically a fighter. He does these like underground fights at the college, and essentially on the night that they're going to happen, everyone gets a message about where they need to be at the right time. And, you know, there's gambling going on and he like fights whoever and he's like this bad boy and everything that Abby shouldn't like but does. The first thing that I've written down on my little review thing is a quote, and or not, it's not a quote, but it's basically something that is talked about in the book. And essentially they say that Abby doesn't put up with any of Travis's shit and that's why Travis is into her. But she does put up with his shit, because let me tell you about this scene. So they are going to go to a fight, and basically what happens is, now in the book, Travis and Abby make a wager, and if Travis wins the fight, then Abby has to stay in his apartment for a month, and then if Abby wins the bet and Travis loses the fight, then he has to abstain for a month because Travis is trash and he basically sleeps around, which is not the issue, but I'm saying it's an issue because he's trashy Travis and that's just the way that it is. Anyway, there is this scene where they're gonna go to one of these fights and Abby changes into this like halter neck top that's quite like revealing for the cleavage. You know, women have cleavage, fucking deal with it. And she has like these jeans on. Basically she looks hot as shit. She comes out of this room wearing this outfit, you know, her best friend's there with her boyfriend and trashy Travis is there, and he takes one look at her and he's like, you are not wearing that, take it off. And she's like, what's wrong with it? And her best friend is like, oh my god, like she looks amazing, she looks hot, like what's your, you know, issue, Travis? And trashy Travis turns around and he's like, well, if you wear that then I can't concentrate on my fight because I'm going to be thinking about all the guys that are looking at you. And so eventually Abby changes her clothes because he doesn't want her wearing it, because he is a piece of shit and he's controlling and awful and abusive. And then there's like a bunch of other scenes where, you know, they'll be kind of like broken up. They're not even official, right? They'll be broken up even though they're not official. And then he'll go and sleep with some random woman because it's not a massive issue for him. And then Abby will go off on a date with someone and then he'll punch the guy in the face because she's not allowed to date anyone but me even though we're not dating. He's just such an arsehole. I hated this book because it just glorified abusive relationships, and I literally saw on TikTok, there was a TikTok that was basically hyping up this book and it was like, oh, reasons why you should read this, or it had like a quote and it was to get people interested in reading it. And then someone in the comments put, Travis is incredibly abusive and this whole book glorifies abusive relationships. And a young girl, I can't even make this up, commented to that comment saying, but he never hit her though. And that's why I have a massive issue with this book. Also, Abby's friends were trash. Like, I say friends, her best friend was trash. Like, one minute her friend would be like, oh, like, you shouldn't be with Travis, stay away from him, he's an asshole. And she'd be on Abby's side because Travis would do something horrendous, and so her best friend would like fight her corner and basically go up to Travis and be like, you're an asshole. And then the next minute she'd be like, you need to date Travis because like you'd be so good together. And then she'd be like, you can't break up with him because Travis is gonna go mad. And like everyone was sticking up for Travis and being like, you can't break Travis's heart because he's gonna like kill someone or whatever. Why is everyone so scared of trashy fucking Travis? I honestly, if you can't tell how much I hated this book, then I don't, if you like this book, good for you. I just don't like the fact that it glorified abusive relationships. I'm okay with reading about an abusive relationship if that abusive relationship is going to be pointed out by, I don't know, the characters or the plot in some way. But in this book, it was glorified and it was made to seem like that was an okay way to treat someone and that was an okay way to act. And plus, the author is problematic in the worst possible fucking way. This book was the worst, so I gave it a 1 star, and to be honest, it doesn't even deserve that 1 star. It deserves absolutely fucking 0. If not, it deserves -1,000,000. That's how I felt about this book. I can't deal with it. This book even had the audacity to have a fairy tale ending. So if this didn't make it clear, I will not be reading on with the series. I do not care for these characters, and I do not care for the plot, and the only way that I would read this is if I found out that Trashy Travis dies in the most horrendous way at the end. So then the 5th book that I read in March was Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. This is an adult thriller book. It follows a woman named Laurel who 10 years earlier had her youngest daughter go missing and no one knew what happened to her. And then 10 years later, the story begins. She ends up falling in love with this guy. However, as soon as she starts falling in love with this guy, things start unraveling from her past, and essentially we go from there with all of this mystery and intrigue. So I really enjoyed the way that this book was written. It just kept me engaged the whole way through. The only thing that I would say about this book was that there wasn't really much of a plot twist. I feel like everything was kind of handed to you on a plate, so there was nothing really mysterious about it. You kind of know what happened to her youngest daughter at the beginning of the book. I mean, if you can't pick up on, you know, thriller books and like plot twists and all that easily, then maybe you won't guess what happened, but it's pretty much handed to you on a platter. But I actually didn't mind that about this book, because it was kind of nice to see Laurel and see everything unravel as she was learning about it, and having yourself already know what happened, because it kind of made this whole build up of like, oh my god, how is she going to react? What's going to happen at the end? I did really like the ending as well, because it wasn't like a cliffhanger or anything like that, but it was just kind of a little bit soul destroying in a way. It didn't really make me cry. It did make me a little bit teary, but like not crying teary. It was just kind of like a really heartfelt ending. There was also multiple perspectives in this book, which I actually really enjoyed. I'm really funny when it comes to multiple perspectives, because they can either be done really well or they're just really bad. And in this book, all of the voices felt incredibly distinct from one another, and I just thought that they were really well done, and I enjoyed the fact that each perspective kind of helped unravel the story. I just thought it was really well done. Overall, I gave this book a 4 stars. I definitely will be reading some more Lisa Jewell books. I know that my friend has read some and she also really likes this author, so I'm definitely going to read some more. I'm definitely hoping to read one of her more popular books that was popular recently, because everyone has said that the plot was more complex. But yes, I'll definitely be reading some more Lisa Jewell in the future. So then the 6th and 7th book that I read in March, I'm going to mention consecutively because they are both a part of the same series, and that is All the Lies and also Paint It All Red, which is book 4 and 5 in the Mindfuck series by S.T. Abbey. Again, I won't go too far into the plot of these. I mentioned it earlier. It follows a woman who becomes a serial killer after she went through some very torturous stuff when she was a teenager, basically to get revenge on the people that did her wrong. Again, really fun series, a little bit insta-lovey. One of the things that I did write down was the fact that the books don't really give you a recap. Now, there is a book that you can buy that has all of the stories combined in it. However, if you read it on Kindle, you can have them as like individual books, which is how I read it. And so every kind of like month or so I would read, you know, one of the books. I think I read the first and second one in 1 month, and then I left it a month and then I read the rest. I can't remember, but I think that's how I did it. So I had quite a gap in between books, and it doesn't give you really a recap of what's already happened. So I would probably recommend, if you're really into this series and it sounds like something that you would enjoy, definitely read it back to back, because I feel like you would retain more of the information that way. Overall, they're just really fun and they're super quick to read, which is one of the other things that I really enjoyed about it. If I was ever looking for just a super entertaining, fast read in between books that were a little bit heavy or a little bit boring, or like books that I hated, like in this instance, it was just a really good series to pick up. I also found that some of the social exchanges between characters could be kind of juvenile in a way. It was very, you know, like childlike, or like kind of like they were teenagers, which was kind of a bit odd to read about, considering that these are supposed to be grown-ass adults with like careers, and like one's a serial killer. So that was kind of odd, but super entertaining series. I gave both books 3 stars. Overall, I'd probably give the series as a whole probably a 4 stars, just because of the entertainment factor. I actually told my friend about this series, and I told her, I was like, oh my god, like I don't know if you've seen on Goodreads, but it looks like I'm reading BDSM, but here's what this series is about, and here's what happened at the end, and it was so crazy. And she was like, oh, like those covers do look like BDSM books, and I kind of looked at them and thought, get it girl, but actually that series sounds really cool. And it is. Don't look at the individual covers for the books, because they are not erotica. They have a little bit of sprinkling of smut, but like they're not overly smutty. My Sarah J Maas books are more smutty than those books, which I found super surprising. So those were all of the books that I read in March. If you read any of these books, please let me know in the comments below what you thought of them. Please let me know in the comments below what your favourite book of March is, and also your least favourite book of March, if you had one of those. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a like, and also don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more content from me. And until the next video, I will see you then. So bye guys.